Thank you very much. You may be seated. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mamoloko Kubai. I am the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development in the Republic of South Africa. Let me acknowledge His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, ministers, deputy ministers present here, director generals, leaders, captains of our industry, leaders from Business for South Africa, CEOs, business leaders, senior government officials, members of the media, and distinguished guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Phase 3 of the Government Business Partnership. Maybe before we start, I must just remind all of us, if we didn't, let's just check our phones and make sure that they are on silent so that they don't disrupt the proceedings, as we are going to be as efficient as possible and ensure that we utilize our time quite effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency President, this partnership has brought government and business together around a shared national priority to accelerate inclusive economic growth, unlock investment, strengthen confidence, and create jobs. Since its establishment, the partnership has focused on practical delivery, accountability, and measurable outcomes. Phase 3 of this work marks the next chapter, which is building on the progress achieved to date and sharpening our collective focus on the interventions required to lift growth and create jobs at a scale and pace required. Today's program is deliberately focused and concise. We will begin with an address from Mr. Andre Ngo, who will speak on behalf of business. We will then hear the keynote address from His Excellency, the President. Then will be followed by a Phase 3 presentation that will be co-shared between Mr. Martin Kingston and the Director General of South African Government, DG Baleni. After the formal proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, we will invite you to take a group photo with all of us who are here as a symbol of our attendance, but also marking this milestone. And then we also will like to invite you afterwards, like we did as we arrived, to join into networking session where something will be offered. Without any waste of time, I'd like to bring yes, something. Nibbles. That's when you manage expectations. When you manage expectation, you don't become deliberate and precise. So that if the expectations are higher, they come lower. If they're lower, they come higher. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Go is a co-convener of the partnership and chair of BLSA. He has played a central role in convening and sustaining the partnership from the business side since its inception. He will address us on the opportunities that are presented to us by Phase 3 for the country, but also the role that business will continue to play in supporting growth, jobs, and confidence. I think we can all agree that the partnership has been quite successful in many areas, and there's still quite a lot of opportunities that lie ahead. And we've seen where we work together, as we say, working together, we can continue to do more. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Andre Ngo to come and address the forum.
Sure. President, ministers, colleagues, honorable guests, it's really a big honor for me to make opening remarks on behalf of business. I have some slides to show you, but I want to actually just make a few comments that are carefully written. South Africa is dealing with two realities at once, almost paradoxically. The first is a societal crisis. A decade of growth, near 1%, has left 8.5 million people without work. Households and young lives whose potential is going to waste. Unless we grow at 3% a year, unemployment rises. 3% is the floor. The second reality is the genuine potential for economic growth. Load shedding has ended. Logistics are recovering. Our credibility is being restored. The green shoots are real, and they prove that when business and government work together, this country solves problems many believed unsolvable. These two realities shape the spirit in which business enters phase 3 of this partnership. Phase 3 is therefore not business as usual. It is a deliberate step change from removing the constraints holding the economy back to actively driving growth in the sectors where South Africa can genuinely compete globally, grow and create jobs. The partnership itself is a unique asset. Very few countries have built what we have collectively built here. Business and government working together in a structured and meticulously governed way on the country's most difficult problems and delivering. Phase 1 and Phase 2 proved the model's efficacy. We are now building Phase 3 to scale it for all South Africans. Business knows, and this is important, our role at this stage of our country's evolution is above the interests of just business. They lie with the interest of all South Africans, and that is important. Phase 3 is now an urgent laser beam focus on growth and jobs, and the explicit goal of a minimum of 3% growth and 1 million jobs created by 2030. That is what we set out to do. To contextualize and make the point, the partnership is unique. It is a carefully governed structure. It brings in a structured way business and government together. It has cadence in terms of meetings. It meets quarterly under the leadership of the President. It meets weekly in the JSOC structure. These are all crucial issues. It has a clear focus on 4 streams until now through Phase 1 and Phase 3. Phase 2, as you can see, energy, transport and logistics, crime and corruption, and youth employment. The focus has been clear. And within each of these streams, there's been absolute focus. What is that unit of currency that is important? How do we get there? By what date? There's been no ambiguity, and I think that focus has been remarkable. As you heard earlier from the Minister, it has been central in Phase 1 and 2 on some of the real progress that we're making as a country. Load shedding has ended. Our logistics structure is recovering. We're making progress in terms of credibility. It's being restored. And that's quite amazing. To an extent, I think we've steadied the ship as a collective, and that I think is quite remarkable. The truth is there are real green shoots. You all know this. Despite a very complex macro environment, I think headwinds geopolitically have been pretty severe. There's amazing green shoots that are appearing. 6 quarters of growth, 2 ratings upgrades. The rand has appreciated 13% over the last year. I think that's remarkable. Inflation has come down 27%. That is important. And the cost of capital is coming down. Long-term rates, long-term gilt rates or bond rates are coming down. The 10-year bond has come down over 220 basis points. It's a remarkable set of progress. But juxtaposing to that is we are not getting growth. That's the challenge. Growth stays at this 1 to 2% level. National Treasury has a focus at 1.6%. It's simply too low. And the real tragedy, and that's the problem, is unemployment keeps rising up to 33.6%. We have to find a way, and that's what Phase 3 is about, is to bring these green shoots into proper growth and into the creation of jobs. And that is absolutely fundamental. Crucially, jobs and growth are inextricably linked. Growth leads to jobs. Growth in jobs leads to confidence. Confidence leads to investment, leads to growth, and you get this virtuous cycle. But the link between the two is quite complex. It's not linear, and that's the difficulty. Firstly, when we grow, we've seen, the data is clear. When South Africa grows, we create jobs. At high levels of growth, the job coefficient is 0.6 to 0.7%. That's remarkable. When we grow at kind of like high levels, 5%. But when you grow at 1%, you start to shed jobs. Even though there's moderate growth, companies are battling, and they shed jobs. So the actual coefficient is not linear, and that's crucial. We have to get high rates of growth. The other non-linear issue is that there are 300,000 people net coming into the job space. So we have to find a way to create 300,000 jobs a year, else we're going backwards. So a function of how many people are coming in, less people retiring, has a net 300,000. That's a remarkable challenge that we have. So from the chart, as you can see, what the analysis shows is 3% growth keeps unemployment flat. It's the floor. 1% growth, you can see in the gold, unemployment rises dramatically. And at 5% growth, which is where we need to be, you can see unemployment comes down. And so getting back to the fundamental theme of phase 3 is we have to get at least 3% growth. Without that, we can't create the jobs that we need, and we know that. So the point is how to do it, and that is what we are focusing on in phase 3. The approach being taken that we think is very intelligent, deterministic, top-down, sector by sector. Focus on sectors that we can really leverage in the short term and get growth. We don't have time to get to these levels of growth. We need to do it now. This is not business as usual. So the basis of phase 3 has been on the analysis of trying to find out which sectors can really leverage quickly and are elastic to growth and job creation. The analysis was done, as you can see, this is hopefully simplifying it somewhat, but against 5 important variables. The first is what sector is economically material, is material in the economy. Secondly, which has potential incremental uplift. In other words, what's the gap analysis between where it was at its peak prior to COVID, where it is now, and understanding what their potential is. The third, and this is critical, jobs, employment and inclusion. Which sector, when it grows, creates jobs? We don't have time to wait for intergenerational skills. We need jobs throughout. Unskilled jobs, we need to move very quickly. Which of those industries has the potential to do that? Fourthly, which is linkages across the economy? When it grows, it brings other stuff along with it. And finally, very importantly, which industries or which sector has kind of endogenous levers that we know and understand, that we can pull those levers domestically and get growth. We can see it, we understand it, know it. And when you do that analysis, you find 4 industries come out, as you can see. Infrastructure, mining, tourism, and agriculture come out in that analysis fairly clearly to us. And that is the focus of phase 3. How do we use these industries to really get scale? I think the remarkable thing, and I believe that this is a very important message we need to get out, when you look across all the sectors, beyond just these 4, the potential of our country is remarkable. Our industries, our companies have tremendous potential to grow. And we look at these 4 in particular, it's remarkable. Mining is a geological superpower. It's kind of asleep. We need to really wake it up. It's a leader in PGMs. It's got incredible market share across many different commodities. It's massive in its contribution to GDP and employs a huge number of people. It needs to scale. Agriculture is remarkable as well. It really is a global export platform. We have world-class technology in agriculture. We have leadership in macadamia nuts, in citrus. It really is a Southern Hemisphere powerhouse that's counter-cyclical to the rest of the world. This is something that can really grow. Infrastructure is sitting there, 2 trillion rand backlog that's waiting to be funded. There's a 1 trillion rand catch-up where we need to be. And the country's amazing. And we have deep capital markets that can fund this if they are bankable. And they should be, and they can be, and they must be. We have to get there. And then tourism is such an incredible export industry for us. If you think of anything where we have real assets to export that are world-class and competitive, 3,000 kilometers of beautiful beach, cities like Cape Town where overseas visitors like to go, game reserves, I don't need to tell you this, you know it well. It's remarkable. And the amazing thing about tourism is it's algorithmic. For every 13 tourists, it creates 1 job. That means if we can up the number of tourists by 1 million people, which we should be able to do easily, for every 1 million we increase it by, generates 80,000 jobs. So that heuristic is such a powerful, powerful kind of clarion call for scaling that particular sector. So when you look at these 4, you see the amazing potential of the country. We need to really push it incredibly hard, and we can. So the thinking behind phase 3 is really a crosswalk from the 1.6% growth to the over 3% growth, as you can see on the chart. And fundamentally, what we are trying to achieve is taking the partnership from 4 focus areas to 10, as you can see, and breaking them down into 3 conceptual buckets. Firstly, enablers, energy, logistics, as you can see. Then the growth drivers, the 4 industries that we have picked out of that analysis. You can see crime and corruption as a confidence multiplier. That is fundamental. It's an existential problem that we face. It's been part of phase 1 and phase 2. We're putting it on, continuing to drive that very, very hard. And then 2 issues we're adding. One is narrative, which is critical. From business side, we've identified 2 incredible leaders to focus on this, to change the narrative locally and globally about the potential of the country. That is fundamental. And then we've added the city of Johannesburg. I think people know well, businesses taken a very strong view that this is hugely, hugely problematic. We've been out there speaking about it. We've created a placeholder here for when things settle down and there's a counterparty we can work with. Business is ready to use those disciplines and our capabilities to help build the city. So that is the crosswalk of what we set out to do. Importantly, it fits into the same structure under the president, as we've done, and as you can see from the slide, it's exactly the same construct, the same discipline. Business is there as a collective in what we do, and mobilizing across now 10 particular focused streams, as you can see, through the drivers we've identified. And that is really the process of phase 3. We are very proud, and with Martin, Lisa, and others who are working in that steerco, and the people here in the steerco, there's a large group of business CEOs involved in the steerco, in driving it, and very proud of how many people have come forward around actually mobilizing towards these new streams. So what you see are from our side, the CEOs that have come forward, that have deep domain expertise, have experience in each of these streams, and that's what we set up bringing into phase 3 of the partnership. Our focus, President, is, as we spoke about a while back in actually discussing phase 3, and I appreciate your insights into this, President, is an absolute focus on 3% plus growth. We have to get there quickly. The green shoots are there. We cannot wait. We have to do that as quick as possible and create jobs for all South Africans. Nothing is more important. Thank you, President, and thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I think as you spoke, I then was reminded of a quote by Kwame Nkrumah, which says, "Those who would judge us merely by the heights we have achieved would do so well to remember the depth from which we started." I think it's very profound as we look at the journey that has been traveled and linking from the previous work to what we are doing today. With that, ladies and gentlemen, the President's leadership has been central to this partnership, to the shared commitment between government and business to address the practical constraints holding back growth and employment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm requesting that we rise and welcome His Excellency, the President, to address the session. Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Thank you. As Adrian and I walked in, we marveled. I don't know whether the word is marveled, that this used to be one person's home. It's so expansive and so intense. But I told him that we held the BRICS summit here, where we had President Lula, President Xi Jinping, and the others. And because he couldn't attend, for a whole number of reasons, we also had President Putin on the screen. So don't laugh. So it's a real joy to be here, and I recognize ministers, and business leaders, and the chief executives of various companies and structures that we work with, and chief executives of state-owned enterprises, and our directors general in government, and representatives of labor and civil society, and I welcome and greet all of you. I should say that Adrian's presentation was very, very clear, to the point, and lucid. You'll see the two screens. They are all pivoted on a pillar which has written at the bottom, lucidity. So he was very lucid, he was very clear, and I think they may well have come from business leadership South Africa, so that we are all lucid, and I'll try to be. But I'll also try to go back into how this partnership has evolved. Because as we gather today, we do so not merely to extend this partnership, but to raise its level of ambition. And Adrian was very clear in articulating that, because this partnership was born at a time of immense crisis in our country. Since then, it has become an instrument of inclusive and economic transformation. And he's right in saying it's quite unique in the world. I spoke about what we have built as a partnership at the World Economic Forum, not this year, but the other year. We addressed business leaders and so on, and government leaders at the WEF, and told them the unique partnership that we have, which I have not been able to hear about anywhere in the world. And it is this spirit of partnership that we have developed over decades and decades that today is enabling us as an instrument to move ahead with the challenges, or to address the challenges we face. And this partnership has gone through a number of distinct but interlinked. Phase one was about stabilization. You may recall we were facing enormous challenges, and we needed to stabilize the country in a number of areas. Phase two was about reform, beginning to address the whole process of reform, and I'll deal with that a little bit. And phase three must now be about growth. Now, the partnership must be about converting the progress that we have made into investment, into productive activity, and the creation of jobs. That's what it must be about. It must be about ensuring that economic recovery that we've been working on for all these years since essentially 2023 is felt not only in improved balance sheets of our enterprises, both private and public, by the way. It must also include stronger markets and favorable economic indicators, but it must also be felt in the lives of the people of South Africa. They've often and always heard us about reform, and they have experienced it. The end of load shedding is something that, at a personal level, many South Africans have experienced, including the young boy who I met when I went to Hout Bay. We had just gone out to sea, and as I came back, 7-year-old, he said, "Mr. President, please, you must bring back electricity. I want to watch my favorite program on TV." And then I realized that we needed to do it for everyone, including that 7-year-old boy. This partnership was established, as we know, 2023, and rolling load shedding, as Adrian also talked about, was causing immense challenges, I've said, to even this young boy, to businesses, and immense hardships to households and public institutions. But the other area was the deteriorating performance of our railways and ports, and that was constraining our exports and was disrupting supply chains and weakening our competitiveness. You will recall that Abu Dhabi port used to be amongst the best in the world. Not the very best, but amongst the best, and it's now come down. It had come down quite significantly. And of course, we then also had to face the challenge of grey listing by the Financial Action Task Team Force, which exposed serious weaknesses in our systems for combating money laundering and financing terrorism, and confidence in our country was under severe strain. Now, the quote by Minister Kubai about what from Kwame Nkrumah talks so much to what we've been through. We may want to think about the heights that we are now sort of reaching and going towards, but the depths of where we've come from is also what we need to reflect on and see the extent to which they can continue propelling us to move higher. Government and business, therefore, had to come together, as well as labor, by the way, We had to come together around common purpose to address the most immediate constraints on our growth and to restore confidence in South Africa's future. This partnership was founded on a simple, but I would say powerful principle, as it has over many decades. There are challenges that government must lead in resolving. There are investments and capabilities that only business can mobilize. And there are reforms that require the support of both labor and the participation of communities. Now, all these four key stakeholders in the life of our country have had to come together. And there are national challenges that none of us can overcome on our own. Even at government level, we know we cannot overcome all these challenges on our own. We need partners, and that's what this partnership has been about. So this partnership does not transfer also the responsibilities of government to business. It does not blur the distinction between public authority and public investment. Rather, it brings together the respective capabilities of government and business in pursuit of clearly defined national objectives. It recognizes that the state must govern, it must regulate and deliver. It recognizes that business must invest, it must innovate, it must produce and create an conducive environment for job creation. And it recognizes that both government and business do have a shared responsibility to build a more inclusive economy, and what Adrian Gore was saying testifies or talks to that. We have learned through this partnership that when we agree on the problem and establish clear priorities and mobilize the necessary expertise and hold each other accountable, we can make meaningful progress. This lesson has relevance beyond our borders as well. Last week, South Africa hosted the 46th Ordinary Summit of SADC Heads of State and Government. Now, the summit focused on the actions needed to deepen regional integration, to advance industrialization, and to expand trade and create employment. Now, Southern Africa faces substantial challenges. These include the growing impact of climate change and security of food and and water, and constraints on economic growth. And it also faces the same challenge that we face, high youth unemployment, as well as the continuing threat of disease outbreaks and pandemics. DRC is a case in point, and a number of our companies are invested there. Yet ours is a region of immense promise as SADC. And I say this advisedly because many of the companies that are represented here also operate beyond our borders. You operate in SADC regions as well as in other regions on our continent. We possess extensive agricultural land, and agriculture is one of the areas that we want to focus on. Abundant renewable energy resources that just go beyond fossil fuels, solar, hydro, and many others, and significant reserves of critical minerals that are so needed by many countries around the world, as well as a young and increasingly connected population, many of whom are now skilled. Southern Africa is well positioned to benefit from a number of things that we are doing in our own country, including energy transition, the digital revolution, and the reorganization of global production and trade as we trade with the continent. But potential does not become prosperity by itself. It requires sound policy. It requires capable institutions, also efficient infrastructure, and regional value chains that we can build, and investment on a far greater scale. So no country can sustain prosperity within a region that is stagnant. Our national economic recovery must therefore contribute to the industrial development and economic integration of the entire Southern African region. This is another reason why partnerships between government and business are so important. And I raise this because we are not an island as South Africa, and having had a SADC summit recently, I would also like, as we move forward with our reforms, to see how best we continue the interconnection with our region and continent. Over the last 3 years, this partnership has demonstrated what focused collaboration can achieve in energy, in government, established and the energy and the Energy Action Plan and the National Energy Crisis Committee that we set up are clear proof of what we could achieve. Business mobilized technical expertise. And at the beginning, there was some doubt about whether, government is now going to be captured as business was bringing its expertise. And the matter was discussed in government. And we had to have courage to say we need to bring to bear the expertise that business has. We need to bring to bear the innovation that business has. And in doing so, we've strengthened the partnership and the way that it functions. South Africa has now gone for more than a year without load shedding, and it was largely due to also the participation of business and bringing the expertise, as well as what our government departments have had to do in working together. Our power station performance has improved, and a substantial pipeline of private investment in new generation has been established. In fact, we have become the poster country, particularly on our continent, with regard to new investment that has flown into renewable energy. Important steps have also been taken towards the creation of a competitive electricity market. This includes the granting of a market operator license to the National Transmission Company of South Africa and approving the new grid capacity allocation rules. Now, these developments and this progress wasn't there in the past, and it has happened because we've worked together in this partnership. But we must not confuse the absence of load shedding with the completion of energy reform. We still need to expand the transmission grid, bring new generation capacity online, address the crisis in municipal electricity distribution, and ensure that electricity remains affordable for households and businesses. Our electricity has become one of the most expensive in the world, and we now need to focus on how we can make electricity costs affordable and competitive so that our economy can continue growing. In freight logistics, government, as we all know, we established the National Logistics Crisis Committee and adopted roadmap. The decline in rail and port performance has now been arrested. And as you saw in Adrian's PowerPoint presentation, we've made a great deal of progress, and we're now beginning to recover. Rail access agreements have been concluded with private train operating companies. This marks an important step towards a more competitive rail system in which public infrastructure is strengthened through additional investment and operating capacity. Now, there's often criticism that government is privatizing and all that. What we are doing is what other nations have done, giving opportunity to operators on a concessional basis to bring in investment. And that's precisely what we are doing as well, because government does not have the money to continue investing in the infrastructure that should drive our economy. So we need that partnership, and we need to come up with innovative ways of ensuring that it happens. I've sat for many hours with Minister of Finance at my home even during winter times, sitting around a fire, debating how we can come up with innovative ways of bringing in investment. Our mines, our farms and factories depend on railways and ports that work and that operate efficiently, reliably, and at a globally competitive cost. In the fight against crime and corruption, government established, as we all know, the Intergovernmental Task Team to address the weaknesses that were identified by the Financial Action Task Force. And the removal of South Africa from FATF grey list was a major achievement of the reform process that we have been in. What has that done? It has boosted confidence in the country and has created a platform for further investment to come in. It strengthened the integrity of our financial system and sent an important signal to investors and our international partners. The establishment of the Digital Forensic South Africa is another important development. And that will help strengthen the capacity of the state to investigate complex financial crimes, and it will enable us to ensure that there's accountability. Our work in this area must now go beyond compliance. We must increase the investigation and successful prosecution of serious commercial crimes and recover stolen assets and dismantle the criminal networks that are damaging our institutions. In phase 2, the partnership expanded its focus to youth employment. This recognized that unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, is the greatest social and economic crisis confronting our country today. As Adrian said, government and business have worked together to expand access to employment by young people. The backlog in the global business services incentive has been addressed, contributing to the creation of more than 26,000 jobs in that sector. And the partnership also has focused on employment-intensive sectors, such as tourism and the digital economy. But we need to do much more in tourism. We are well endowed as a country that can attract more and more tourists. And these interventions have opened opportunities for many young people, but they have not yet reached the scale that is demanded by the crisis that we face. So we must be honest about the distance we still have to travel. And this is what phase 3 now does for us. And despite the progress made in energy, logistics, and crime and corruption that we are making, and youth employment, our economy continues to grow well below the level that can reduce unemployment. So therefore, what Adrian Gore was saying is so important. For millions of South Africans who cannot find work, economic recovery remains an abstract idea for them. For a young person who has never held a job, and there are quite a number of them, progress must mean an opportunity to work. For a small business that is struggling to survive, reform that we are talking about must mean reliable electricity, efficient municipal services. Adrian spoke about Johannesburg, which is a major challenge for us. And those young people who are in business also talk about access to finance. For a farmer, progress must mean that there are functioning roads and railways, effective biosecurity, and access to domestic and international markets. And for workers and communities, the growth that we're talking about must mean rising incomes, greater job security, and a fair share in the economy of the prosperity of our country's economy. Now, the true measure of the reform that we've embarked upon is not the number of policies that we announce or a number of summits that we hold. It is the change that reform produces in people's lives. There are encouraging indicators, but our economy must start moving in the right direction to move towards that 3% and beyond growth. Now, We've received sovereign credit rating upgrades. Adrian spoke about how the rand has appreciated 13% in a short space of time. That's quite phenomenal. Our bond yields have improved, and the stock exchange has performed well, the largest stock exchange on the continent. These developments reflect growing confidence in the direction of our reform program. But confidence is not an end in itself. Confidence must lead to investment. It must produce the jobs that are required. It must also mean that government itself, as a key regulator in the economy, must act and get things to happen. And jobs that we need to create must lead to better lives for our people. So government, we have placed economic growth at the center of our program. We are implementing the plan for growth and inclusion and the industrial development strategy for 2026. We have set a new ambition to mobilize 3 trillion rand in investment. Through Operation Vulindlela, as we all know, we are accelerating structural reform in all the areas where we are working together. Now, these measures are establishing the foundations for growth. Now, I also want to look back and say, you might recall that one of our key reform areas was in telecommunications, which we often never talk about. We were in the dark ages when it came to telecommunications. The International Telecommunications Union had to say, South Africa, you are lagging far behind. And when we opened up the spectrum, we saw how our telco companies, including Telkom, started investing. So if we plot the journey that we have traversed on reforms, there are quite extensive reforms that we have embarked on. And sometimes we focus only on electricity and logistics, but telecommunications was one other. And the way government functions, particularly in a greater focus on infrastructure, is one other area of reform. Now, phase 3 of this partnership must now build on these foundations I've spoken about. And I've taken time to speak about them because quite often we gloss over where we've come from, and that is why Kwame Nkrumah's quotation, which is so apt, Minister, informs exactly what we need to focus on. The central focus of our phase 3 must be inclusive growth, jobs, and confidence. Our immediate objective is to lift economic growth above 3%. That should be our focus. But growth of 3% cannot be the summit of our ambition. It is a necessary threshold from which we must advance towards higher, sustained, and more inclusive growth. The composition of growth matters as much as its rate. We need growth that is labor intensive, as we've heard. We need growth that expands our industrial capacity. And we need growth that supports small and medium enterprises, black industrialists, women-owned businesses, and business owned by young people. Now, this is not only political speak. It is something that we all need to focus on. We need growth that reaches the rural communities, townships and small towns. And we need to focus on that as we even get into phase 3. For this reason, phase 3 should expand the partnerships work into the areas that Adrian spoke about, which we haven't really focused on, for instance, agriculture and mining. We now need to focus on them. These sectors have been selected because they have significant potential to do what? To attract investment, to earn foreign revenue, to strengthen localization and create employment at scale. So they are cogent, they are credible, and they are areas we must focus on. Tourism is one of the fastest ways to generate jobs, and Adrian says 13 tourists coming into our country creates 1 job. Now, we easily can have way more than 1 million, many more millions of jobs added to what, tourists rather, added to what we have. Because for every visitor, employment in accommodation and transport, food services, entertainment, retail and creative industries just expand. Our task is to remove the barriers holding the sector back. So as we focus on this phase, on these areas, we therefore need to look at what the barriers are and intensively do so. We must improve air access. We don't have enough air travel that comes into our country and within our own country. We must modernize, yes, continue doing so, our visa processing. The other day, with Minister Schreiber and Deputy Minister Nzuza, we launched the ETA. It was just excellent because we had a Chinese visitor coming, which I processed. You'll be pleased to know that I processed that visitor as they came in, and they almost hugged me and said, Mr. President, this is one of the best, because it was flawless. It was within 2 to 3 minutes. So we need to do that. We need to enhance tourist safety and expand investment. Yes, we need to focus on safety so that when our tourists come, they should know that they can travel to the Kruger National Park easily themselves with greater safety. They can go to Sun City. They can go anywhere they wish without being subjected to safety dangers. We must ensure that the benefits of tourism extend beyond the established destinations to our villages and to our townships. Now, agriculture and agro-processing have the potential to create many more jobs across the country and strengthen our food security. We must address the constraints relating to water, because there is a huge challenge, and now with El Nino coming, we're now going to have an even bigger constraint. We must address transport and biosecurity. We must build competitive agro-processing value chains. We're a leader, yes, Adrian, in citrus. We are the biggest, even bigger than Spain at the moment. Macadamia, in a whole number of other agricultural produce. We must accelerate land reform in a way that expands production. Government is now releasing land and giving those that we had leased land to their title deeds. And I said, why are we loaning land to farmers for 3 years, 5 years, and so? We must give them the title deeds. They must work the land, because government will never come from the union buildings and work that land. And we are now releasing the land. And farmers, small-scale farmers now, feel proud that they own the land and they can go to the bank to borrow money based on the title deed they have. And we are going to speed up identifying more land that government owns and release it to our people, and therefore speed up the process of land reform. And we must connect smallholder and emerging farmers to finance, to technology, and to extension services. And I announced that we need to employ up to 10,000 extension service people who will go and service our farmers. And mining is one of the foundations of our economy. South Africa industrialized because of the mining industry, and the global transition to cleaner energy is creating unprecedented demand for the minerals that we have, the critical minerals. We must take advantage of this opportunity. And this requires a modern, transparent, and efficient mining rights system that has improved a number of processing effects when it comes to mining. And we must address illegal mining and organized crime. It also requires greater beneficiation, and this is where we've been challenging our investors and our companies that let's move in the direction of beneficiation. We were very pleased that it was the European Union that embraced the call that we'd been making for years about beneficiation. And that has now become something that is being broadly accepted. And we must also allow junior miners and black-owned mining companies to play a key role in the mining industry. The expansion into these sectors does not mean that we will reduce our focus on energy, logistics, and all those that we've been focusing on. It must mean that we are now focusing on the areas that will create greater progress. And we cannot declare victory while critical reforms remain incomplete. And we all know, seated here, that our reform program has shown greater success, but we have not yet reached the summit. So therefore, we need to continue doing so. And I say that advisedly to encourage us in government, even our officials, the workings of our departments, as well as the private sector, that we need to continue focusing on the reforms. So in phase 3, we must deepen implementation, embed the reforms more clearly, and we must also make progress that cannot be reversed. People have been concerned that are these reforms reversible? Will they be reversed one day when something happens? My answer is that no, they are not going to be reversed. We want to embed them so that they do not reverse. This phase must be defined by disciplined execution. You know what I mean when I say when something happens. So we want to ensure that the reforms are not going to be reversed. And every work stream must have the clear objectives that our structures, our JSOC must also work on. We must have measurable targets and firm timelines and accountable leaders. Where there are problems, we need to talk about them. And Adrian Go and I often talk and say, here, there are problems here, how can we unlock them? And then we move forward to unlock them. Progress must be monitored regularly and reported transparently. Where implementation falls behind, we must intervene rapidly. And we must be able to talk honestly and directly to one another without mincing our words. Where one partner in the partnership lags behind, we must talk about it and encourage one another. Where policies or regulations are holding us back and holding investment back without serving a legitimate public purpose, they must be reviewed. And there are quite a number of policies, and we've often spoken about the regulatory environment. I do concede that our regulatory environment is too congested. It makes things happen too slowly and sometimes not happen. And I've often said it's important that partners must raise these issues so that we talk about them. I often say that the issue of visa reforms was so clearly raised with us and with me specifically when we spoke to some of the international investors. And they said, Mr. President, our CEOs who have to come and manage the money that our companies invest are not able to get visas to come to South Africa. Every 3 months or 6 months, they have to leave and stay out for 9 months or a year. And we started that reform process. And so therefore, it happened because it had been raised more sharply and directly. So I encourage all of us to have that approach of raising these issues. Where institutional capacity is weak, it must be strengthened, it must be raised. And where corruption or vested interests obstruct progress, they must also be confronted. We must maintain the highest standards of governance and public integrity. So the partnership must operate transparently within the law and in the public interest. There has been criticism in the past that your closer working with business means that you could easily be captured. And the more we work transparently, the more we are able to hold each other accountable, the better our people will really fully believe in the efficacy of this partnership. And there can be no special favors, no privileged access, and no weakening of the state's regulatory responsibilities. And these are the values and principles that we need to adhere to. The credibility of this partnership depends not only on what it delivers, but on how it delivers. Business also has an important responsibility. As confidence improves, South African businesses must invest. We've often heard that business has billions and billions to invest. And now, as we strengthen this partnership and move into phase 3, we need to see that happening. They must expand production, open new markets, develop local supplies, and create jobs. They must support transformation, not merely as a compliance requirement, but as an economic necessity. And for me, transformation is really the key. And we are seeing transformation in a number of industries moving, in others moving rather slowly, where women are still few in number, where black people are still few in number in the key echelons of various enterprises. And we must therefore, as we strengthen this partnership, be able to focus on those areas which some may regard as soft issues, but they are important issues. An economy cannot reach its full potential while the majority of its people remain excluded from opportunity and decision-making, as well as ownership. Companies must invest in skills, support small businesses, pay suppliers on time, and open procurement opportunities to new entrants. Minister of Finance Godongwana said to me today he's going to raise the issue of skills and making sure that we are able to urge business to move faster on skills. And I'd like him to do that, because skilling our young people, not only to get certificates, but to also get jobs. And we've established a system of the SETAs. Now I'd like to see business playing a very key role in the SETA process rather than moving away. I've heard that some of them have tended to move away and say, we're giving money, but they were not getting involved. I've spoken about the reform of the SETA system. And I've spoken about how we can begin to embrace or to implement what countries such as Germany and Switzerland have introduced, where they have a dual system. Government, for its part, must provide policy certainty, which in many ways we are doing as we cooperate and as we have this partnership. We must have capable institutions and reliable infrastructure. We must improve the ease of doing business while we protect workers, communities, and the environment. We must build a professional and ethical public service. And that's why we have a number of DGs here as well. Above all, we must act with urgency. And South Africans cannot continue living on the promise that we will grow at more than 1.6%. South Africans want to see real growth. They need to experience progress in the present. They are looking for us to demonstrate that this partnership can produce results, and the reform that we have embarked upon can produce improvement in the lives of our people. So, in the end, the establishment of this phase 3 is therefore both, in my view, an expression of confidence and an acceptance of responsibility. Confidence by all of us in each other, and confidence by business and government, and indeed labor and communities, that we can, if we strengthen our partnership, move forward together. We've shown that we can stabilize the situation that prevailed in our country. We must now show that we can grow. And this is what phase 3 is all about. It is based on the depths that we went through, and it must now be based on the heights that we can achieve. So colleagues, let us all work together. And I'm truly excited about embarking on phase 3. And from government side, we are prepared, able, and willing to work together with business to embark on phase 3. And we want to ensure that all these areas that we're going to focus on can proceed, because we cannot grow the economy alone. Business cannot build it alone. We need to work together, and labor itself cannot participate in the economy alone without government and business. So all of us working together and respecting our distinct roles and responsibilities, we can achieve a great deal. So I'm here then to launch phase 3 and to say phase 3 is really going to live up to the promise that we all want. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, not only for your input, also for your active and present leadership. As you spoke, I'm reminded that you are chair of SADC and you hosted SADC heads of states in Durban, linking that to tourism. Very apt, because Durban is rated by IBTM in the top 14 of the world destination for MICE sector. So we are reminded that we are a country with beautiful sights and sights to see, as a former Minister of Tourism. I would like now to invite Mr. Martin Kingston, Chair of B4SA Steering Committee, and the Director General in the Presidency, Ms. Phindile Baleni, to jointly present the work that will be undertaken in Phase 3. They are also co-chairpersons of the Joint Strategic Oversight Committee for the partnership. DG and Mr. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Program Director, Minister Kubai, to the President, Ministers, leaders of business who are here with us, Deputy Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, standing on the protocol that's been established already. We are now, together with Martin, going to share the presentation where we now present a bit more of the detail, giving a scorecard report of the areas that were covered in Phase 1, Phase 2, and indicating what specifically in Phase 3 will we be focusing on. I'll do the first 4 slides, Martin will do the second 4 slides and conclude our presentation. So Phase 3 is about a commitment to scaling our model. Today, when we talk about scaling the model, we're saying that we are going to be adding additional ministers as well as CEO sponsors who will be joining the platform, as would have appeared from Mr. Gore's presentation, the growth multipliers. So we had been working on the growth enablers and growth enablers as well as confidence builders, but now to drive the growth, we're adding 3 sectors, agriculture, mining, as well as tourism. And each sector will have its own set of ambitions, milestones, and matrices, as well as how it contributes to GDP and the job creation. And the architecture takes us from 1.6 national treasury baseline to about 3% growth and the creation of 1 million jobs. So detailed matrices for each sector will be announced, and we will continue with the quarterly feedback processes that we have had. So together we are saying that we are building a common South Africa incorporated growth narrative with a clear roadmap to achieve it. So where have we come from? In energy, there's significant progress in the operational performance of the key utility in the country, Eskom, and a few key interventions that are still needed to progress the reforms in line with the Electricity Regulation Act, as well as the investment targets that we've made. So in Phase 2, the extreme left box, we indicate the specifics that we have delivered, amongst others. The South African wholesale electricity market, the internal market has been launched. We've tested the system, and we will launch it externally for all participants in the country in the next 6 months or so. The market code has been submitted and public consultation is underway. The market operator license, as the President had mentioned, has been granted already. Traders have been licensed up to date 16. The electricity ERRT Phase 1 has been completed. So this is the Eskom restructuring team that's focusing on the establishment of the National Transmission Company and its creation as an independent entity, taking it outside of the Eskom family so that it is accessible fairly to all players in the market. And then, of course, the grid access unit has been set up, and all of that we did in Phase 2. In Phase 3, our ambition is to fully embed the key reforms and deliver the wholesale market for everybody to participate, all market players. We're also looking to establishing the TSO, the restructuring roadmap, which was published in 2027, and implementing thereunder, and the regulatory reform as well by end of 2026 will be finalized. The grid expansion is a key thing because now we've got generation and we've got customers on the other end, but the transport in between at the moment is gridlocked, excuse the pun. So we are looking at unlocking that, and up until now, by March 2027, we're looking to have established 550 kilometers of transmission line, but the target is 14,000, and that's we're still a far away from that. On the extreme right, you can see the impact of all of the actions that we're going to be taking. So firstly, we want to embed the electricity sector reform. Secondly, build investor confidence. And finally, unlock the 32 gigawatt of electricity to be invested in the South African economy. When it comes to transport and logistics, in phase 2, clear deliverables there. President referred to some of them. We have unlocked the Durban Gateway Terminal. Through the Durban Gateway Terminal Partnership, we're getting an investment of 10.5 billion rands, and we will restore the glory of the Durban port. We have appointed 11 train operating companies. 14.7 billion of approved infrastructure funding has now been unlocked. Those in the main, that amount of money in the main will be on the maintenance backlog, and we're looking at approximately 500 rands of an investment pipeline in the PSP transactions. The National Rail Master Plan has been published for public comment. Three ports are in the top 6 of the most improved ports in the country. And of course, the Regulator Act has been promulgated, and the board has been appointed. The process of an unbundling or restructuring, the Transnet Ports Authority, the task team has been appointed, the plan is completed, we'll just move it over the line. In phase 3, what is our ambition? To ensure that reform certainty is established so that we can unlock private sector investment. Private sector participation, we would like to see that being scaled, and as indicated, of the 11, the 6 will be operational in 2027. The container concession and management and manganese transaction has been issued to the market, or will be issued to the market by December 2026. The Richards Bay Port RFP will be done in March 2027, and the rolling stock company transactions concluded and operational by December 2027. The regulatory and governance enablers are being attended to as well. The National Rail Bill has been submitted to Parliament. The Transport Economic Regulator is fully operational by March 2027, and the implementation of the TNPA corporatization will proceed very well and at pace from April 2027. And the corporatization of the Transnet Infrastructure Manager, the plan will be finalized by March 2027, and various iterations have been in place, so the date is not going to be moved. Of course, we are looking at further improvements from an operational point of view, and on the right-hand side, that's the impact of what we're looking to achieve. Mainly, grow the economy and create jobs. When it comes to crime and corruption, a confidence multiplier, as Mr. Gog called it, unless we create safety and stability, investments does not follow. So what have we done in this space, in this partnership in phase 2? We've raised sufficient funds to support the criminal justice system for training and the utilization of digital tools, where a certain number, up to 1,500 gadgets and devices, have been passed through this particular point of partnership. The digital forensics capacity has been operationalized and implemented in a few cases that are live. Of course, the FATF grey list removal, we're now preparing for the next mutual evaluation. However, our approach to FATF is to maintain the golden standard and not necessarily to work for complying with evaluation sessions. And we are looking as well at the amendment of the National Prosecutions Act, where we have finalized some amendments, and we are looking at further improvements as we go along. What our ambition for phase 3 here? High impact prosecutions, where we're looking at ensuring that by the first quarter of 2027, 7 priority cases have been successfully prosecuted, which would be backed up by the appropriate private sector, legal as well as forensic and analytical capability. We are looking at the digital modernization of the criminal justice system, where we're looking at starting with 6 priority police stations, and then we will expand the existing digital evidence support unit, which is supported by the DEU and SABC by the end of 2026. We are also looking to disrupt the illicit economy, because that is taking away quite a sizable amount of economic growth as well as revenue of the country. We're looking at a smart borders, a proof of concept which should be implemented, but this will be a whole of government approach to ensuring that we disrupt the illicit economy in the country. We will also be laying out a criminal justice reforms, clearly structured process based on recommendations of the various panels and commissions that we have had, and combining it with a broader digital modernization process. And phase 3 will work on strengthening the rule of law so that we ensure economic growth, job creation, as well as peaceful existence and living of South Africans. Coming to youth employment, an area that the President spoke to last and invoked the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance said to me, I must say when I get here, that he has already spoken to me about this. And we know that once he has, something will happen. In phase 2, we have achieved a few things, including the uptake of the SA Youth Job Matching Platform, and yes, work experience. We have resolved the backlog that we had in the global business services sector, where 26,000 new jobs have been created. We are looking to scale that one up as well. The digital skills joint funding model has since been resolved, and we will be creating a good number of jobs in that space. And of course, the President himself processed visitors when the electronic travel authorization was launched. What are we looking to do in phase 3 as our ambition? To ensure that the key systematic changes that have been started are implemented over the next 12 months in a way to hardwire them as well so that they're not reversible. So we're looking to increase our youth labor absorption through employer-driven initiatives where young people will be trained for demand and not necessarily just trained for them to have the qualifications. We're looking at amending the rules around skills and funding to support youth employment. So as a start, we have implemented the 40% mandatory grant to employers. We're looking to restructure the way the skills funding works from the CETA and the National Skills Fund, as well as LAB, to ensure that we coherently direct that to experience and work-based learning in priority sectors. The regulatory environment to increase and enable the micro, small, medium enterprises. The National Credit Act has been amended, but we need to do a little bit more in that particular area. That National Credit Act amendment is unbelievably enabling once that the amendment is effected. And of course, we're looking at ensuring that the public employment programs are sustained, but they serve as a transitional measure and they do not become an end in themselves. And we see proper transitions to earning opportunities by participants. Of course, what the targeted impact, that the systemic changes be implemented and effective from April 2027, and a creation of 1.8 million more job opportunities to reduce youth unemployment. At this point, I'm going to hand over to my co-presenter, Martin, who will take us through the new areas that we're going to include, the growth drivers. Martin?
Thank you, DG, and good afternoon, everybody, President, ministers, colleagues. Many in the room who've been already involved intimately in the work that we've done in the first 2 phases of this partnership. And as you've said, President, and indeed DG, just as we require a whole-of-government approach, so we require a whole-of-business approach. And you'll recall that we mobilized a whole-of-business response to the pandemic. That's the early generation and genesis of the partnership, and we've used that going forwards, and many of those who are involved in the initiative are here in the room today. And we're going to adopt the self-same techniques and methodology for the new areas where we're scaling in phase 3, as we've done already for the first 4 areas under phase 1 and phase 2. We think that's a disciplined, appropriate approach. We've had the opportunity to align with the line ministries as well as with the ministers concerned in each of these areas. We recognize that in many cases there are cross-cutting aspects that also need to be borne in mind. We're using existing platforms of business wherever possible, as Adrian showed on his slide. And in each of these areas, we've brought on board CEO sponsors, as we call them, again, many of whom are in this room, to lead from the front, to demonstrate a sense of purpose and commitment on behalf of business more broadly. If we look at mining first and foremost, we know there's enormous potential, as Adrian has said, to unlock the mineral endowment for all South Africa. It makes a 6% contribution to GDP currently and employs just under 500,000 people, about 3 to 5 times employer multiplier effect, and dependence of 5 to 10 in each case, supported by each mining job. So an enormous capacity to scale, and we know that we're underperforming relative to our potential given our resource base. And as Adrian, you said, our endogenous capability to address any constraints in the system. In each of these areas, and as the President has said, we have held one another accountable, and we've set very precise and clear objectives and deliverables, which we commit to transparently reporting back on to South Africa at large. In these cases, we're looking at 12 to 18 months, and over that period of time, in the phase 3 ambition, we are committed to jointly increasing investor confidence and investment by unlocking very substantial capital expenditure, we think in excess of 50 billion rand within the next 18 months. To address any administrative and other constraints with respect to project implementation, again to accelerate the implementation of major mining initiatives, large and small, and to identify where we have real sector competitiveness and improve opportunities for the country at large, and to do that in the very short term, as we say here, by February 2027. And then finally, to roll out the cadastral system nationally by the end of the first quarter of next year. We all know that is a major constraint and an enabler. All of this, we know, will increase not only mining's contribution to GDP, but very significant enhancement of jobs, both directly and indirectly. The second resource that we want to unlock is agriculture and agro-processing. There's scope to unlock not just rural output and processing capacity, but also export market access. It is already a very significant contributor to GDP, some 14% of direct contribution, over 1.5 million employees in the industry, each of them supporting between 4 and 7 dependents. So again, we can understand the level of leverage and scaling. In the case of phase 3 ambitions, we've been very focused, and we've distinguished between immediate opportunities and longer-term initiatives, addressing any constraints at the Port of Cape Town, particularly during the summer season, by making available technical expertise and resources to work alongside and in support of Transnet. Again, as the President has said, we are very mindful of our role. We're not going to usurp or cross any inappropriate lines. But what we've demonstrated in the first 2 phases has been the ability to provide at arm's length technical expertise has been very significant in removing constraints. We think there's some 5 billion rands worth of export value that can be realized as a result of that. Expanding access to export markets by identifying measures to open up specific priority export markets. For example, we think that beef could increase from 5% to 20% of the beef production in the country. And we think that there could be a material increase in the contribution to GDP if we're disciplined about how we do the work on export markets. Again, President, as you've mentioned, addressing the issue of land reform, making private sector resources available at all levels to achieve not only the title deed transfer for new entrant farmers, but also enabling access to finance through commercial lending. And actually, we believe that in the near term, it's possible to unlock production of over 100,000 hectares of land, but actually there's far more that has already been committed to by the government. And then finally, agro-processing, looking at what we can produce domestically and process domestically, identifying the 2 or 3 highest impact opportunities. All of these, we think, will create in excess of 100,000 jobs. And as with the other areas, we commit to coming back in the next 2 to 3 months with detailed work plans agreed with government as to who is going to be responsible for delivering these outcomes. In the case of tourism, we all recognize the potential. Adrian and the President both talked to it. Greater air access and coordinated destination marketing are the 2 areas of particular focus, not only to grow foreign air arrivals, GDP and jobs, but all of the associated industries through the hospitality chain as well. At the moment, it contributes some 5% to GDP, nearly 1 million direct employees involved in the industry, but we think there is very significant scope to increase the level, particularly of international tourist arrivals, and the launch of the ETA will obviously significantly assist that. And so once again, we've aligned with the Minister and the Ministry of Tourism to see how that can be achieved, both with respect to increasing the level of arrivals, but also opening up direct routes and growing demand in core and new source markets by coordinating destination marketing on an integrated basis between the private sector and with government. We think that an additional 750,000 international air tourist arrivals could create over 20,000 jobs and add another 10 billion or so direct contribution to GDP. If we go to the last slide, I just need to emphasize 2 or 3 points, if I may, President. The first is, as we've said, and as Adrian indicated, there are 3 key aspects to our architecture in the partnership. Growth enablers, that is, of course, energy and freight and logistics, already covered in phases 1 and 2 of the partnership. Growth drivers, the new areas that we've identified for growth, the 3 that I've talked about. I haven't talked about infrastructure. We're working on it. We've already discussed, again with the Minister today, how we can have a coordinated and integrated approach to infrastructure underpinning all the work that needs to be done, and if necessary, and to the extent appropriate, making specific resources and technology available to work through that process, not just in support, obviously, of energy, transport and logistics, but the other major infrastructural either enablers or constraints in the system, and we'll report back, as I said, in the next 2 to 3 months. And the third is confidence multipliers. We've talked about crime and corruption. We all recognize the importance that it plays, the attention that the country at large and indeed the international community has on what is happening every day in the country, and the need to address that in a constructive way. And again, President, for business to play an appropriate role in providing support as we're currently doing. The City of Johannesburg, where we will work with the Presidency to determine how and when it's best appropriate to lean in to provide the type of support that we're doing in these other areas. And all of that, obviously, drops down into a narrative which is appropriate and positions the country best in the minds of investors, both domestic and international. And of course, it's that investment that will drive growth that will drive jobs. And that, of course, is our primary objective. As Adrian said, 3% must be the absolute bare minimum that we're aspiring to. We think these initiatives alone can generate by 2030 over 1 million jobs. We look forward to reporting back, as I said, in the coming months, and to the President in our quarterly meetings. Thank you for attending, and Minister Kubai, if I can hand back to you.
Thank you very much to both DG Baleni and Martin. Thank you very much. I think that's quite mouthful and assisting. Colleagues, we have come to the end of our program. but I'm requested to inform you to network a bit. Mr. President, they are saying you have not met them for a long time. If you could be interacting with them for 5 minutes here, it's easy. If you could be interacting with colleagues for a few minutes while we set up for the photographs, we set up for the photograph so that we have a memory for this day. I won't be coming back, but just to indicate that we really appreciate this work that has been done, that has brought us together here today, and finally being able to see this progress that has been done. Most importantly, those who work behind the scenes, we want to thank them for all the preparatory work, the putting together the areas of focus, but more importantly, being able to identify what needs to be done and literally making sure that the partnership has objectives that we need to work on, as President said, that we'll be able to evaluate as we go forward. Thank you, ministers, for being here, deputy ministers, business leaders, leaders of business organizations, but most importantly as well, all of us as participants. The team will definitely indicate once they are ready, Mr. President, for us to move for the photo opportunity. And for that, something that I promised. Thank you very much.